Hey everyone, and welcome back to the EdgeVerse Techcast. I'm Bridgette Stone here with my co-host Kyle Dando, and today we're joined by someone many of you in the embedded world already know, consultant, educator, and community powerhouse Jacob Beningo.
Yeah, Bridgette. So Jacob, over the past, he's been shaping how developers learn and grow. He uses his trainings, workshops, articles, and he has a lot of huge conversations with the community all across the industry, different topics. He's also recently, and this is where you and I got involved, been diving into our Freedom ecosystem and some of the latest MCUXpresso development tools. And so I'm really excited to hear what Jacob has to say. Jacob, thanks for hanging out with Bridgette and I today.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, we had our crossover event. I was on your podcast a couple months ago, and now you're on ours.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, we had a lot of fun on that one. So definitely looking forward to being on your guys's.
Well, Jacob, we like to do a fun icebreaker to start. And so, low hanging fruit, when you're chatting with your neighbors, people who aren't deep in embedded systems, how do you describe what you do? It's always fun hearing how folks explain this world in normal human language.
Yeah, so after spending 20 years trying to explain to people what I do, I've pretty much come to the point now where I just tell them I write software or I do software consulting. Maybe there's a few that are a little more technically inclined. I might pick a specific area and be like, oh, I write software that runs on electronics, or I might tell them I help people write flight software, or maybe I do the whole thing of I help embedded systems developers and teams modernize their embedded software practices so they can develop faster, smarter firmware. But I've tried for 20 years to even explain to my wife what I do, and it comes down to now I'm just like, I write software.
Yeah,
So,
That's perfect.
Keep it simple, right?
Exactly. Yeah. You go too in depth and the eyes glaze over, and it's like, okay, you don't want them to think that you fix computers, because that just puts you in a whole different category of neighborly.
Help desk.
Exactly. You become the help desk. Exactly.
Well, we certainly know what you do, Jacob. We've worked together for a couple of years. You were someone we wanted to get the MCX Freedom Board. We got you those pretty quickly after the launch, correct?
Yes. Yeah. I think I got them fairly shortly after they came out.
Yeah, I think for the listeners, we talk quite a bit about our MCX and the Freedom ecosystem. Why don't you, as an expert or experienced person, why don't you explain to the listeners what your experience was like and how did you get started, and maybe even mention how you thought the VS Code experience was?
Yeah, absolutely. So my experience with the ecosystem and the platform has been, I think, overall really well. It's certainly been an evolving experience. I would say when I first got my hands on the boards, just like with any launch, there were things that hardware-wise, everything was fantastic. Software-wise, there were a couple little hiccups I came across. But the cool thing about it was that, as I mentioned, those things were kind of smoothed out over a fairly short period of time. And then I think over time, I've just seen the experience getting better and better. Particularly with when you mentioned VS Code, I particularly like just how well the MCUXpresso for VS Code is integrated, how it allows you to very easily get access to SDKs, update the software, even go over and pull the latest repos and versions for Zephyr and work with Zephyr within the VS Code environment. And so I think there's been a lot of really cool hooks in there that allow people who really enable a lot of different workflows for folks. So there's some folks that really want to work IDE based, and you can do that within the VS Code plugin, but also there's options where you can right click on workspaces and open up the terminal and still have that development environment that you guys have put together and allow you to work at the command line if you have to. I think it really opens up a wide variety of ways for developers to create their software, in addition to some of the other capabilities within the ecosystem, like some of the example codes and projects and stuff like that as well.
And what did you think about the Freedom Boards? We brought those back. They had been so popular 10 years ago, brought them back. You said the hardware was pretty solid. What do you think about the Freedom Boards?
I really like the Freedom Boards. Maybe it's nostalgia, but I was a big user of the Freedom Boards in the past as well. And so when you guys brought them back, I was like, oh, all right, cool. And then when I looked at the actual hardware, the microcontrollers, the expansions that were available on it, I thought they're actually really cool. To be honest, I actually have adopted them for the Zephyr training that I do. They're boards that I work with on a daily basis, and also that I'm looking at using in other activities, like within my Embedded Software Academy and some of the other classes that I do teach when I'm not doing my consulting work. But yeah, I think they're fantastic.
Yeah, well, a shameless plug. I think most of them are under $25 or right around that. convenient for, as you said, getting started, or gosh, I heard about that part, but I don't want to spend $100. Well, when all the freedom boards are under $50, it's really easy for you to offer a class, or for someone who's trying to evaluate NXP to just take that jump, right?
Oh, exactly. And it's got enough on there that sometimes you get really low cost boards and they don't have enough hardware to really be able to standalone teach useful things to embedded developers, right? But there's enough on here that just out of the board, like you said, at the $25, you can do everything that you need to between LEDs, some light sensors, memory, and stuff like that to be able to show off some cool applications, in addition to the expansion that can always be added on there. But yeah, I've really enjoyed working with the hardware, to be honest. The parts that are on here, I think, are quite powerful as well. I use the MCUXN quite a bit, the dual core Cortex M33 with Trustzone and all the other cool things that are on there. It's a very cool part.
Well, we appreciate you partnering with us. And I know you've been using it for classes and trainings, like you said, but also growing with us and giving good feedback to the team. So much appreciated. And we know that you're plugged into such a huge community of embedded developers. What's the current pulse right now? Any themes or frustrations or excitement you're seeing rise to the top?
Yeah, I think the industry as a whole, there's a lot of different things going on. And especially depending on the industry that individual developers are working in, there's different frustrations, different challenges, and different things that might be exciting them. But kind of overall as an industry, I'm finding a couple of things. First of all, I found a lot of folks are really interested in Zephyr RTOS and what it will potentially unlock within the industry. When I first started my own podcast a couple of years ago, there was a colleague that I had, and he said Zephyr is really the true open source RTOS. I think he had a really great point, because if you look at it, yeah, there's other open source RTOSs out there, but for one that's being guided by the Linux Foundation, has so many partners and such a huge ecosystem, there's actually really a lot going on there. So I've seen a lot of folks really excited about that. I think, honestly, frustration wise, I think it's a lot of folks are frustrated with the CRA and security, maybe for the fact that a lot of embedded developers, they want to be at the low levels, they want to be building things, and they kind of see the CRA and security as these extra things you got to bolt onto your system that maybe they really don't want to worry about, even though security is something that's pretty important. Some other things I'm seeing, and obviously one that's close to my own heart, is just in general a theme of modernization. I see a lot happening with teams adopting DevOps, modernizing their build systems, moving away from just pure make-based systems, moving to CMake and Ninja. I see a lot of teams trying to figure out what to do with AI. I think there's a lot of teams out there right now that are ignoring it, but there's also a lot of folks I'm interacting with who are really excited about it and some of the solutions that it can actually bring to the industry. Maybe those are a couple of the high level ones that I see happening right now that folks are most excited about. And the normal frustrations of there's never enough time in the day ever to get everything done that we need to, right? So we're always trying to go faster
That's
and
always a
deliver more
constant.
features. Yeah, that's a constant that's never going to change, but a constant frustration to us all, right?
Well, Jacob, I'm not going to disagree, but I'm going to tell you, I think that's why we love our jobs, because everything you just listed, it's like the candy store. You don't have to sit there and eat the same candy when you're working with embedded computers. You can work in all those things you just talked about. There's not enough time in the day. That's what I think is great, is everything you just talked about. It's not one thing. I bet you, of our listeners, you touched 5 different groups, and they each listened to what you said and they agreed with you differently, right? So that's what's so cool.
Exactly. There's just so much going on, and I think you're right. The reason why we like our jobs is because it's constantly changing. As engineers, we have this need to tinker and be constantly learning and playing with new things. And if the industry didn't evolve and change at the pace that it does, we'd all be bored and uncontented or something, right? I know when I go on vacation, I stop working and then I go, okay, I'm on vacation. What do I do? I look and I go, oh, well, there's all these things I wanted to play with that I haven't had a chance to do yet. Some technique I want to try. And so I pull out a dev board and my family goes, are you working? And I go, no, I'm not working. I'm
You're
just
playing. Yeah.
So
Exactly. Yeah. That's funny. So you talked about so many things already. And so when you're talking about NXP with the customers, and you rattled off a lot of things. You talked about the Freedom boards, the Zephyr support, the VS Code extension, a lot of the things that you've worked with NXP. What's the one thing that developers are going to appreciate the most working with NXP? Just pick one and say, hey, NXP done a great job there. If you want to evaluate NXP, you're really going to be surprised and happy with this thing.
Yeah, I'm going to give you the one thing that encapsulates all the other stuff.
And Jacob,
So,
don't say podcast.
yes, this podcast is the one thing. While that is true, I think there are some other things. I think how NXP has been looking at just the modernization of the way that you interact with developers and what you provide to them. And so what I mean by that is you can look at, for example, the VS Code plugin, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And you look at the fact that you've enabled a modern workflow, right? You've allowed it so that people can adopt CMake and they can adopt Zephyr and they can integrate tightly into the VS Code ecosystem to allow multiple developers to kind of use their own workflows. And from within that environment, we can get access to the application code hub and see examples and all that kind of stuff. One of the things that I think has been fantastic is it's not necessarily the individual components, but the way you've looked at the larger picture of what the developer workflow needs to be and what a modern developer workflow looks like. And you guys have really tried to enable that and integrate that all together so that it actually works seamlessly for developers to leverage the ecosystem. Maybe that's not one thing, but the modernization piece and seeing how all these individual puzzle pieces come together into one larger modern workflow, I think is something that a lot of developers will appreciate.
Yeah, well, we appreciate that feedback. It's a lot of work. It's a big challenge. Some people see this and they go, oh, NXP is making changes. But I think once people put their toe in the water and they start to explore it a little bit, they see, okay, this is the electric car. This is something that is going to make things better. I'm going to have to change something, but the benefits of change, once they get in, they realize, like you said, it's really going to improve their workflow and their ability to work with other people.
Yep, absolutely. And you may have traditional developers originally who resist some of these changes, but you want those changes to be happening early so that when you suddenly go, oh, I need this, it's actually there and it's ready for you. You don't want to be, oh, I need this, and the tools aren't there yet, the process isn't there. And I think there's always resistance to some change, but from what I've seen with where the direction you guys are going, I myself am really excited about it. I can see how this is enabling a lot of development and helping people, I think, go faster and develop better firmware than the techniques that we've currently used. Definitely, you'll find some resistance, but I think as those folks really get educated, try it out themselves, they'll recognize, oh, this is actually the way to go.
We appreciate you sharing that. And I know a lot of our guests have contributed to this modernization, Kyle and his team, and to hear that it is making a difference, really appreciate you sharing that feedback.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, I'm happy to. I think it's some great stuff that you guys have been doing. And I know like when I've taught classes with these boards and the tools, we've gotten great feedback from folks attending as well. It's definitely a process every time you try to do something a little bit on the bolder side of things, right? As people catch on and understand the new processes and techniques.
For sure.
So.
Well, so you create some incredibly helpful training material, articles, demos. We see you all over the place. You're at events and conferences. What's maybe one or a couple current projects you're working on that our listeners should absolutely not miss?
Sure. Yeah. So a couple of things that I'm currently working on that aren't project wise, but available like for listeners and stuff like that. We've got coming up here. Stefan Bauschen and I every year put on the Embedded Online Conference. We're in the process of putting together next year's speaker list, which we're going to have the event in mid-May. It's an event that's very technically focused. We try to bring together a lot of well-known speakers from around the industry for a week of online conferencing, essentially. So people can go on demand and kind of learn and find solutions to their problems and stuff like that. So that's one thing I'm currently working on and we're ramping up. Anyone who might be listening that wants to give a talk, the call for talks is actually still open. We've identified some initial speakers, but probably through mid-December, we'll be finding additional talks and workshops and stuff like that for folks. And then one other thing that's kind of near and dear to my heart is my Embedded Software Academy, which is where I've basically been trying to create a low-cost knowledge repository of modern techniques for people to learn how to build better embedded systems. Things that cover like build systems, their software architecture, how you integrate DevOps, looking at simulation, even looking at AI and ML and how that applies to embedded development. And that can be with code generation or just using it for coding reviews, improving business processes and stuff. There's so much stuff that can be done there. It's a really exciting time, honestly, to where the industry is today and where some of these tools and techniques are going to be taking us. Before I ramble for too long, those are probably the two that right now, even this week, those are the things I'm most focused on as far as educational things for the industry.
Very cool. Well, we'll make sure to drop information in the episode notes on that. And if anybody is interested in speaking or reaching out, you can contact Jacob.
Jacob, again, thank you very much for being our guest today. We've learned a lot. So just for me to recap, The first thing you covered was the environments that you're involved in. And you mentioned Zephyr, how huge that's been. And then you talked about the Freedom ecosystem and how they go hand in hand. You have a low-cost platform, and then you have a really fast-growing ecosystem. I think our listeners should make sure they investigate your top thing NXP provides to the customers and to our listeners is the development environment. So if they have the time and they get the MCUXpresso for VS Code extension, when they go in there, you did a great job explaining, they have access to all these things. They have access to the Freedom ecosystem. They have access to our new GitHub SDK. They have access to all the wizards and getting started tools within VS Code. So you did a great job. We appreciate you coming on and sharing with our listeners what you found as helpful. And as Bridgette said, we'll drop in the episode notes, your online conference. If they want to attend or if they want to present, they can get in touch with you. And then finally, Bridgette and I, the reason we reached out to you in the first place is because of the wealth of knowledge that you share. Your Embedded Software Academy. If our listeners want to learn more, this podcast is really just to introduce people with topics. If they want to learn, if they want to really sharpen their skills, they can go and explore your materials that you have on your website. We'll put that in the episode notes. So thanks again, Jacob. We really appreciated the time and all the nice words you said about NXP.
Thank you very much for the invite. I really appreciate it. Thanks for all you guys are doing on the podcast. I look forward to seeing where the ecosystem and everything goes in the future. Lots of great stuff that you guys are doing. I want to thank you guys from a developer's perspective of everything you guys are doing for the industry and community as well.
We always appreciate your perspective and the energy you bring to the embedded community. And to everyone listening, thanks for tuning in to the EdgeVerse Techcast, and we'll catch you on the next episode.